Hi, I'm Jennifer Sir. Welcome to the Sewing Room and our Jobs in Fashion series. Today we're speaking with Palesa Nicolini, designer for the MoreWithLess Studio and someone who has had a very interesting career in the fashion industry. I'm excited to talk to her today to learn all about the different roles she's had, from assistant pattern maker all the way through to design director. It's kind of rare that you have such crossover in fashion jobs, but it's not unheard of. And it's really fascinating to find out more about what her job is like. So without further ado, here is Palesa. Welcome to the Sewing Room, Palesa. I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you, Jennifer.
We have this Jobs in Fashion series that we're doing on YouTube, and I really want to hear about your experience in the fashion industry because it seems really diverse as far as your roles that you play or that you have played in different companies. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And it is not a very common journey for most people in the industry, but one that I've taken and I'm still taking, and it's been very fulfilling for me. I got started, actually, my first job was out in New York City and I worked in high fashion. I went out there to go work for somebody. It didn't quite work out, but I met this amazing friend and mentor who said, Palesa, you need to get a real job. And she recommended me for an assistant pattern making position with Isaac Mizrahi, who you might be familiar with, but today most people are, not as they just see his name that's used in licensing products. But back then, he had a full collection, was backed by Chanel. And I was nervous about going and applying for that position because I wanted to be a designer and I wanted to have my own shop and all of those things. And my friend said, don't you dare tell them any of that or they will never hire you. So I went and saw, and I worked for free for a few months, and then they ended up hiring me with all the back pay for all the hours that I worked. And it was almost like my master's degree. It was such an amazing experience. I'm really getting to know the guts of apparel and really in quality design. I worked with amazing craftsmen and pattern makers and tailors. And I also got to be involved in the fittings with Isaac and his head pattern maker and all those beautiful models that still are beautiful, have not aged, and all the fashion shows. And so that was really kind of, I think, what started my career and let me know that there's more to fashion than just design. There's all these other opportunities out there. And then I ended up just kind of following my path. I ended up back in Chicago, and it's not a big hub for fashion, but that's my hometown. That's where I'm from. I ended up being back there, and I got a job working as a uniform designer. So another job that I thought, what is this? But it was a really amazing uniform company. We did custom uniform programs for hotels and spas and car rentals and airlines, and it allowed me to travel all over the country. I worked with an awesome team. They're still some of my best friends today, and it was almost like working for 20 different labels at a time, designing these custom uniforms that had to be worn and comfortable. And sometimes we would only make 10 of one piece, and sometimes we would make 10,000. So I got exposed to a lot of different opportunities with being involved in designing fabrics and thinking about cost and production and timelines. And then I ended up out here in California, and all the while I've kind of taught on the side in different colleges, and I've had a lot of other little jobs, but once I came out here, the teaching job really helped ground me and gave me an opportunity to just get into work and be immersed with the career that I love. And eventually that led to a position where I helped establish or start a apparel division within another company. And I was design director for the apparel division, which focused on sleepwear and loungewear. And I did that for about 4.5 years. And then ended up going up to another startup. And then we had COVID and everything changed. And so here I am today, just freelancing with startups and helping them, whether they're big or small, helping them either as a designer, a product developer, tech designer, and then teaching and doing some of my own work on the side, which is all this stuff behind me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, that was really winded.
That's okay. No, it was really great to hear the progression of your career in that way. And also to know that you help startups, because we get a lot of students in here in our fashion studies program that are interested in starting their own apparel business. And so it's good to know that you might be a resource for them as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of us out here too. Yeah.
So how did you get started as a designer? Were you self-taught or did you have formal training?
Um, I started like maybe like you did, where we had home ec classes in middle school and high school, and I came from a family of makers. They're either making something or fixing something or teaching somebody something. And so once I got into school, we had the educators there to kind of help us and help me, individually work on my sewing skills. And it was something that I've always loved. I was lucky to have a amazing teacher that helped me create my own designs in high school. So that was so fun. I was making patterns out of brown garbage bags and my first muslins out of old bed sheets. And then I did have a formal training. My parents have always been very supportive of both my sister and I in our careers. And so I was lucky to go to an art school that had a really strong fashion design program. And I feel really grateful for that program because not only did it focus on skills that I needed for the industry, but it also taught me a lot of critical thinking that is part of my everyday life today. And so that formal training was very important, I think, to help, just make me more confident and also expose me to things that I would have never known beyond that.
Where did you go to school?
I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Mhm.
And
And
so,
do they still have a fashion program?
yeah, they do. They have a very strong program. They're very similar to CCA out here.
Mhm.
And so they have a BFA program. So I graduated with a BFA program. And so it had a rich fine art background. And then it's a 3-year, very intensive fashion design program. And very small and very creative.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we spoke about this a little bit, but how many places or jobs have you had total since you started working in the fashion industry?
Um, a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of, yeah, I kind of blurred that all out and, in your first question, but I've had a lot of jobs, but not, so my job with Mizrahi, I worked in Italy and Milan, while I was still a student and shortly after as a design assistant, for a company called Intimo Tre, and they're like the Gap out here. And I worked at Isaac's, and I worked as a designer at the uniform company, and I worked on films and theater, and I've worked as a bag designer, a beaded handbag designer for a short while. But I got to go back to India, which I loved. So I've had a lot of different jobs. I'm kind of, one of the downsides of having such a diverse background is that when you're looking for a job, not a lot of the companies that are bigger companies are interested in somebody that has a lot of interests. So I've always kind of thought it would be kind of cool to work for like the Levi's or the Gap, but those jobs tend to be geared more towards people have a very streamlined path.
Right, a very narrow path about what they're working on. However, it's not entirely the case. I mean, I worked at Gap, and they do like variation, so that you can knowing that you can go from one thing to another has, and be flexible. That's a really, in a big company, that's really important, because you have to communicate with so many people, and you have to give into the whims of the business so much. And so that flexibility in skills can be really valuable. But you're right, like with the bigger companies, you tend to have a smaller focus, because it's such a big company that you're dealing with a huge amount of product.
Yeah, and I think and I've had a lot of students from FITM and the art institutes here that have gone on to really great careers there. And so I think, like talking about this idea of careers, you really have to know yourself, when you go into it, and know what you're willing to experiment with. Some people might not want to take a job as a product developer, or they might not want to take a job as a designer. And so, and there's a lot of people out there like that. And fortunately, there are jobs for them. There's a job for anybody in this industry.
Right, there's so many different jobs. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And when I was studying, it really just seemed like there were three jobs. You could be a designer, a pattern maker, or a sewer or something. And then, I think with the way our industry has grown and all the outsourcing that we do offshore, it's opened up a lot of different jobs domestically to help support that and manage that.
um, so you have worked cross departmentally within product development, design, and technical design. What does a typical day look like for someone who's working cross departmentally, or is it sort of more seasonal?
So when I was design director for the sleepwear company, and it was a very small department. We had like 5 people in our particular department. It was, very chronological, because we have a calendar for the industry. And so, and because I was behind each product and each brand, I the natural progression would go, from design to product development to tech design to fittings all the way on to production. And so every day, depending on the time of the year, I would, kind of be doing one main thing. Let's say it was getting ready for market. So, making sure all of our samples were coming in per our designs and per our licensed designs. And then in the meantime, I might be putting together trend boards for the next season. I might be looking for fabrics for that next season. And then working with the factory on production for what we're currently, or not the factory, but we had contacts. Now, a lot of people have contacts, offices in like Hong Kong that work more directly with the factory. And so a day would be a little bit of everything. And that was really easy to manage, when you're kind of at that level. working with everything. But then at another job, in other jobs that I've had where I've worn different hats, you tend to really skip around. And so you can do that. It's just a little dizzying because you don't see one product from beginning to end. You're like, okay, now I got to work on some equestrian pants, and tomorrow I've got to do designs for workwear, now we're doing active wear, or lifestyle wear, and it's fun. It's just a little different mindset when you go in. You don't get as emotionally attached to each piece, because you're just kind of going in, getting those nuts and bolts done and pushing it forward.
Right. So how is that different from working, say, for Isaac, who had a collection that he was working on? Was that also like you were working on multiple seasons at one time, or were you just primarily working on one season, seeing it through, and then starting fresh?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was about 20 years ago. And so that was very linear. And so we would be working on one season, and we would do all the patterns for the fashion show. And then we would see what got adopted. And then we would turn those patterns into our production size along with fittings, and go through the production process, transferring everything to oak tag all by hand. And then sending it out to a pattern grader in New York. And most of our production would go to factories in New York for that label, the collection label.
Mhm.
And then we had a small production that would go to Milan and be made in Italy. And then, we'd go through all that process too. You'd have to change everything to metrics, and, all your seam allowances. And so it was very linear, and I almost want to say that if I were to go work for a company like Isaac's now, I don't know if it would be as linear. I haven't had a chance to talk to people who are doing that, but because we've put so much offshore, we have to kind of work on things on top of each other in order to deliver and accommodate for those timelines, when you can't go run down the street and get a truck and throw a bunch of suits in there and deliver them to Bergdorf Goodman. You've got to wait for them to be shipped over, in a container maybe, and
Hope
go
that
through
there's
just.
nothing wrong at sea, and then hope that customs goes smoothly, all of that, and then it has to be distributed all over the US.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like kind of the bottom line, like what you were saying, and working for a big company is almost like working with any company in the industry today. You have to be very fluid,
Mhm.
and able to kind of pick up what needs to get done that day, and continue pushing it forward so it doesn't get clogged up.
Now, I know I asked you, I'm going to skip over one question. I just realized as my train of thought. Actually, I'll go back to that question. Are you currently working with the equestrian company, or are you just doing contract work for other companies?
Yeah, so right now, I just have a couple freelance clients that I work with. So I have one brand that we just do one product, and we're working on her second product right now. And that's really cool. It's it's Vea Athletica, and she's down in San Luis Obispo. And she's got a really cool product. And so we're working on that. And then I have some of my old clients that I used to work for, and they'll hit me up when they need print and pattern designs. And then there's another loungewear company that I work with.
Nice. Are you involved in any of their photo shoots or fashion shows?
Not the ones I currently work with. So because it's such it's contract work, I guess you could say. So it's bits and pieces. But with the full-time work, yes, always been involved in photo shoots and marketing materials and stuff like that.
Would you tell us a little bit about your passion project, More with Less?
Yeah, it's kind of a good segue, and I'm so glad you asked. It's a little thing that I started during COVID, and I kind of can tie in some of the freelance work that I do. So, like I was saying, one of the companies that I worked for, I'll do print and pattern for them. So I'll design plaids and prints for their line. And then they keep, because they know what I do, they keep all of those pre-production approvals for fabrics that are coming in. And when they don't need them anymore, she'll have a big box and I'll go and pick them up. And that's what I make all this stuff for More with Less. And so right now, these are pieces that I've pieced together and I'm making picnic blankets.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm using the shirting approval fabrics or pre-production approvals and the bottom weight fabric that she had from another line as another side.
Okay.
And those will get pieced together. I pieced together the colorful parts and kind of the aesthetic of it. And then I just started working with a seamstress who helps me make the pieces. So we're kind of starting to think about, like what a manufacturing process would look like for this. And then all the products I bring to farmers markets and I sell there.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to hear about this because I think it's like the wave of the future is working with materials that exist already instead of, I mean, just because our earth is so full of so much already, we have so much. And knowing that you're doing this is so exciting and that you're trying to find a way to put a manufacturing spin on it to make it work so that it is like viable financially as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear how you work with upcycled goods. Is that the only place you get your textiles, or do you source them from other places as well?
Yeah, I kind of get them from all over the place. Maybe I could, since I've got my laptop here,
Yeah.
I can walk you through. So I bring them back after the farmer's market and hang them up so that they stay their shape. But I get upholstery swatches from my interior design friends where these fabrics have gone out of circulation and so they can't be used anymore. And I get leather that I use for handles in these bags from broken equestrian tack.
That's
So like
awesome.
broken reins and bridles and such that people either don't want anymore or can't use. Maybe their horse or pony has grown out of it. And then I thrift a bunch of stuff. So these are like little kiddo aprons that I make. And then I'll go to some of our local kind of dead stock locations or stores like Scrap in San Francisco. Yeah, I got this fabulous like orange webbing there. And then there's Discount Fabrics, which is really predominantly dead stock fabric that has come from, the end of production that they can't use anymore. And so I'll get webbing. I usually get most of my webbing and stuff from there. So, like just knowing what it takes to kind of put a new fiber into production and being able to use what's already out there to me is not it just reduces my stress level,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
It's like, you don't like seeing food go to waste. And I hate to see all those beautiful upholstery fabrics or sweater knit downs end up in the trash. So I love
Absolutely.
the challenge of trying to figure out what to do with it, what to make with it, and have it appropriate for the farmers markets, because that's where I like to sell. Um, and then creating like a, product that somebody can use, the utilitarian part of it.
And your products are beautiful. They're so graphic and so like you would never know that they were made from upcycled materials. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Compliment. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to go and go to the markets and see people's expression when they look at them and hear about what their questions and ideas. And yeah, I get a lot of great feedback, so that's what keeps me going.
And was that a giant wall of corks behind everything?
Yes, more upcycling. Am I not ridiculous? So I work in our shed. It has had many different lives, and now it's my studio since COVID. And it gets really hot. And so we lined the wall that gets the most sun with corks, and it reduces the temperature a lot. It's our insulation.
Amazing. What a great use of all those corks. I'm surprised that you were able to save up that many.
Yeah, that was just from last week. No, it is a collaboration, but we started saving corks a long time ago. And yeah, we get a lot of our friends every time we see them, they have a big bag of corks for us.
That's awesome. That's a great use of cork. I don't know that anybody's using cork as insulation, right? I know they use denim scraps. We have
Yeah,
our insulation in our attic at home is made from a product called Ultra Touch, which is all denim scraps from the Central Valley.
that's great. I've heard of that company. I've heard of that use, that end use. And actually, since we're talking about, I'm going to show you, I have this big bag down here of cuttings from when I cut up the already dead stock fabric. And I started working with a kind of fabric mulcher that's over in South Carolina, and they do large scale fabric mulching.
Oh,
And so they'll take my scraps and kind of throw it in with other people's stuff. And it will become, they sell fibers for like car interiors, like in the trunk and floor mats and
yeah,
insulation.
that's fantastic.
I
Does
know, it's so great.
Will you send me the information for that?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And then do you have to pay for shipping to get it to them, or do they pay you?
I pay, and I worked out a little deal. So, but I'm sure they would be happy to work with you. Um, and so I pay for shipping. If I was on a larger scale, I would actually get a rebate from them.
Oh, okay.
So, for big companies, it's a really great opportunity. And because I begged and pleaded for a home for all my scraps, they were able to work something out. And I'm sure that, it's a very wonderful company. I think a lot of these places that have set up these larger industries are starting to figure out how they can work with smaller people to keep that green recycling and kind of a circular fiber opportunity. There's another company too that I just learned about that you do also pay to ship, but you can ship any fabrics or clothing that's been damaged that you don't want to donate, and they will send it to these companies that mulch.
Oh,
And
that's great. I
yeah, I'll
know
send you that too.
that'd be great. Yeah, I know that in El Cerrito, the El Cerrito Recycling Center, you can put fabric scraps, clean fabric scraps in bags and put them in the US Again bins.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I know Goodwill will also take some. I don't think they would like large amounts, but I think they recycle whatever they probably sell whatever they or give whatever they can to these big places too. It's
Yeah, I think it's a process that's getting more and more streamlined because yeah, like you were saying with Goodwill, it's something that they say they do, but I don't know how much structure they've been able to put into it, like you said, on larger scale.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's
it's great.
fantastic to know there's more companies out there. I'm really excited
Hmm.
to hear about that because we generate so much fiber waste here just from students' excess fabric or my own excess, after you cut everything out, there's always something left over,
Yeah.
even when you try to conserve as much as you can. And I do have a friend that I send all the like quilting, the fancy quilting fabrics to, and she amazingly will take whatever I send, and she makes quilts with it. So yeah, there's great ways
That's
to reuse
yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities to, think about each part of your process and how you could do it a little differently, to make it more environmentally sound.
Well, thank you so much, Palesa, for being here today and talking to us about your career and also about your passion project, the More with Less Studio. I love it. I love it so much. I'm so excited for you and for the planet to have more people like you in it.
Thank you. And Saturday's Earth Day. Um, so I'll be at a farmer's market giving people starter plants with every purchase. So anything you
Wonderful.
can do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.